All right, my friends, it is 11-ish on Monday, which means it is time for This Week in Space. Hello out there in the tubes of the internet. Let's talk about what's going down in the celestial spheres this week. My name is Joan Emerson Bell. I'm a astrologer, tarot reader, astrology coach, and licensed mental health counselor. And I like to show up every Monday at 11-ish to bring you all the astro weather you need to help you navigate another week in space with a little style and a little grace. Before we get into this week's program, I got a very special announcement. I've been doing a astrology themed radio show for quite a while, and I took a little bit of a sabbatical over the summer, but we're so back. I just put out a new edition of the Melee Report, which is all the astro weather you never thought you needed, set to all the music you never thought you would hear. That comes out on SoundCloud. And I'll put a link in the show notes if you want to check that out. And there's also a link in my bio for the folks on Instagram, and you can catch that show there. And I'll put something in my stories when I'm done with this. But it's very similar to This Week in Space, but less talk, more rock. And I make playlists for whatever the astrological transits of note are for the week, and then talk about why I chose the songs and what's going on in space. So if y'all are so inclined, check that out because it's a lot of fun. Also, I will be co-facilitating a Dreaming Mysteries intensive from April 15th to April 22nd in Epidavros, Greece. And if you're interested in checking that out, you can go to the dreammysteries.org or follow Sarah Jane's Dreaming on Instagram and get more information about that retreat. And there's also a bunch of other excellent retreats that Sarah Jane's is running. So, yeah, if you want to go do some dream work in Greece, I highly recommend it. And go to the dreammysteries.org to learn more. All right, that's all the announcements and advertisements. So let's dive into this week in space, shall we? We are looking at this week in space for December the 1st, 2025 through December the 7th, 2025. And we are almost done with this year, my friends, for better or for worse. Who knows what comes next? But woo, this one has been kind of gnarly, if you ask me. So, starting off the week, we are looking at a transit that's going down on Tuesday, December the 2nd. We have Venus in Sagittarius, sextile to Pluto in Aquarius. This is going down at 1 degree and 55 arc minutes. So, we open the week with a supportive sextile between Venus, the planet of beauty, love, values, and relationship, coming into a nice supportive sextile to Pluto, the planet of death, rebirth, and transformation, like real metal type of stuff. Pluto rules the underworld of the unconscious and deals with our survival drives, as well as issues of power. And the sextile is a supportive aspect where these planets can collaborate and communicate, but it can be kind of subtle. So it takes a little work to activate a sextile. This relationship between Venus and Pluto kind of got me thinking about some underworld archetypes, and specifically Cerberus, who's the three-headed dog who guards the gates of Hades. Cerberus prevents people from getting in and the dead from leaving. And Cerberus's three heads kind of point to the past, present, and future. Each one is looking in a different direction. One looking towards the past, one focused on the present, one scanning for the future. As the guardian at the gates of the underworld, he's wicked hypervigilant. You know what I'm saying? And I see this sort of hypervigilance as a trauma signature. Cerberus is remembering the past, events that occurred before, with one mind, applying it to the present with another, and constantly scanning for potential threats with his last head. And so when Orpheus went down into the underworld to try and retrieve Eurydice, He lulls Cerberus to sleep with his music. This allows him entry into the underworld. So let's call in Venus, the planet of beauty, creativity, aesthetic delights. So with this transit, we can kind of use these Venusian qualities of art, beauty, and music to sort of ease the hyper-vigilant defenses, which allows us to access deeper realms of our psyche. The Venusian arts can be an access point that put us at ease and promote a sense of well-being that helps us to gather valuable information that lies below the surface of our conscious awareness. This sextile doesn't need to be like an epic journey into the hell realms. Rather, we can engage in activities that help put us at ease, which can allow whatever material needs to be integrated to kind of emerge at its own pace without needing to fight or struggle or plumb the depths of our psyches. I feel like we've been doing way too much of that during Scorpio season, and I think it can be a little easier. And again, a sextile is a supportive aspect. So like Orpheus, we can allow our sweet music to do its work without needing to kind of crash the gates of our personal underworlds. Pluto is the signature of wealth because all objects of great value come from the interior of the earth. And when we are able to enter into the realm of Hades and move beyond fear and the discomfort of the unknown, we are granted access to the riches that are formed in the depths. And this might not be material wealth like gold or diamonds or precious stones. This is oftentimes the riches of the psyche, which we attain through confronting and integrating the unconscious material that lives in the underworld of Pluto's realm. Venus sextile Pluto can also bring up strong emotions and ignite the passions. Pluto deals with the unconscious and the material that operates below the surface of our everyday awareness. This can be urges and desires or strong emotions that don't have a outlet in our conscious lives. With the sextile from Venus, these unconscious feelings may become stirred through Venusian things like love and beauty. Pluto can also be a tad obsessive, and our unconscious material may find kind of like an outlet through the things we desire or find beautiful. And we may find ourselves sort of projecting, oh, I need that. Oh, I'm like kind of wrapped up in that, as the unconscious material finds sort of a place to latch onto in the conscious world. But a sextile is a supportive aspect. So this may be a little more easygoing than a hard aspect like an opposition or a square, which can really, like Venus in hard aspect to Pluto, can really kick up that sort of obsessive nature. This transit might allow us to access some of these deeper feelings. And one way of working with this transit is to notice what arises without becoming attached to the object of the desire. Rather, we can use that as an access point to enter into whatever's brewing under the surface of our conscious minds. Pluto is also a planet associated with power. This, again, can lead to some powerful feelings during this transit. And we can think about it as participating in the power of beauty and creativity through engaging in aesthetic pursuits or using this power intentionally through making art or doing creative activities. Dancing, making art, writing, singing, doing karaoke are all good things to do for this transit, or anything that allows us to sort of transmute some of our underworld material through a creative channel. And I think about doing karaoke as a vehicle for sort of wailing and screaming and belting out all of the charged feelings that have been brewing under the surface. And I think this is a great way of transmuting powerful feelings and transforming them through a creative Venusian act. This again may help us to engage with our unconscious material, and it can allow us to channel this energy into the world in ways that might please Venus as well as other people. So Thursday, December the 4th, we get a full moon in Gemini. This is going down at 13 degrees and 3 arc minutes. The full moon occurs at 3:14 in the PM Pacific time, making that 6:14 in the PM on the East Coast. So this full moon is happening in the Mercury ruled sign of Gemini. and a full moon reveals what has developed since the new moon. And so this is like the ripening of the fruit that was born from the seeds that were planted during the past new moon. And just a reminder, folks, that this full moon reveals what has unfolded since the Scorpio moon on November the 19th. And I don't know about y'all, but that full moon, that new moon felt extra spicy. It was conjunct Mercury, who is still retrograde at that time, and opposing Uranus. Now we're coming into the full moon period in Gemini, which is a Mercury ruled sign, and now Mercury's moving direct. This full moon may illuminate some of the issues that we were wrapped up in during the Scorpio new moon. And that new moon dealt with emotional information that was operating under the surface that may have kind of pulled us into the depths of ourselves and asked us to recognize some of the emotional knots that have kept us tangled up in old stories or old ways of being. Now, with this Gemini full moon, we get to shine a light on some of the tangles and knots we have been dealing with since then. The Scorpio new moon also came at the heart of Mercury's retrograde, so it may have brought up some of the themes we were dealing with during Mercury's retrograde adventure. With Mercury moving direct now and ruling this full moon, we might get some new insights around themes and issues that were initiated during that new moon phase. So Gemini brings curiosity and is interested in unpacking everything and breaking things down to figure out how they work. Gemini is kind of like opening up all the boxes and pulling out all the drawers to figure out what's there and what we're working with. It's taking apart a radio to figure out where the sound is coming from and to figure out how all of it works. This brings a deeper understanding of the world we occupy, as well as a knowledge of the inner workings of the life that we are living. Now, with Mercury moving direct, this full moon asks us to approach whatever arises with a sense of curiosity and potentially wonder too. And I love that combination of curiosity and wonder. I think that's an excellent way of living that the Gemini archetype reminds us of. And this might help us to illuminate some of the issues that we may have found ourselves struggling with over the past few weeks throughout Mercury's retrograde. Now we get a chance to lay things out and unpack some of the thoughts and feelings that may have bound us up or tied us in knots over the last little while. This might not require any action, only the reflective light of awareness that can help bring these situations into a new context and provide some mental clarity to work through some of the things that move to the surface at the beginning of this lunar cycle. So this full moon is also square the lunar nodes, which are at 13 degrees and 43 minutes of Pisces and Virgo. So I don't talk a lot about the nodes on this program, but I don't know. This one feels pretty charged to me, so I figured I would bring it in. Also, we got a light week in space, so we got time. So this Gemini full moon is square the lunar nodes, which are in the mutable signs of Pisces and Virgo. And in evolutionary astrology, they talk about planets square to the moon's nodes as skipped steps. The planets square the nodes represent unresolved issues that have somehow interrupted the evolutionary journey towards the North Node goal. Planets square the nodes represent kind of a crisis point, a place where things are seeking resolution, and a point where old patterns need to be undone in order to move forward. And I think about the square to the nodes as an opportunity to choose something new. We can do what we've always done and get what we've always gotten, or we can make a different choice and break habituated patterns and old cycles. With this full moon, we have both the sun and the moon square the nodes because the sun and the moon are opposing each other during a full moon. The sun seeks to know, to illuminate, to reveal, and to make clear. The moon seeks to connect, to belong, and to feel. Both of these luminaries are going to be square the nodes during this lunation. The points that are square the nodes are called the bendings of the nodes. During this full moon, the sun will be at the south node bending, and the moon will be at the north node bending. The south node square is a place of release. It tends to be an internal process that hits a crisis point in order to shed old patterns, while the north node bending is a place of building that seeks to reveal itself through external events. With the sun in Sagittarius, we are being asked to release old dogmatic beliefs that may have gotten us caught up in old patterns. We may also be questioning what we hold true. And I think of the current political and economic system in America, um, and how that has really caused us to pause and reconsider what we believe in and the old ideas of truth in terms of democracy, productivity, and the American dream are revealing themselves as mere illusions that no longer hold true for the majority of the US population, and especially for the younger generations who have mostly been shut out of the American dream. This can create individual and collective crises as people begin to realize that the myth of bootstrapping and the idea that hard work is rewarded with economic security is not an actual reality for most. The moon in Gemini at the North Node bending is dealing with belonging, emotional security, relational connection. In Gemini, this is about holding the duality of the self and the other. Perhaps this looks like moving past the perceived differences that have been used to pit people against each other and prevent mutual support and class solidarity, and finding ways to create connections, community support in the face of oppression and manufactured division. Here we get a chance to choose a different path and to break away from old patterns that have kept us from progressing either individually or collectively. The square to the nodes is a choice point where we get to choose something different. It helps us to sort of transform old cycles into new developmental pathways, or I think about it as a circle where we just sort of go around and around and around, and then suddenly we make a different choice, and that circle turns into a spiral, and we get to do something different. And this can allow us to sort of move forward and evolve away from the places we have found ourselves getting stuck and repeating old habits. I think about the square to the nodes, kind of like the Wheel of Fortune card in the tarot. At the south bending, where the sun is, we have the opportunity to lay something low, to release it, to let it go, to sort of send it down the cycle. And at the north node bending, where the moon is, we get to rise something up, to bring a new idea into being and to kind of integrate it into our lives. This is a chance to choose something new based on the felt sense that the moon brings to this party rather than the rational logic that the sun demands. And again, with the moon in Gemini, curiosity and wonder is going to be key. Moving along to Friday, December the 5th, we have Mars in Sagittarius, trining Chiron, who's retrograde in Aries. This is going on at 22 degrees and 57 minutes of these fire signs. So, Mars is a planet of action, aggression, courage, and conflict. Chiron represents our core wounds and our ability to grow past that wound through self knowledge and our personal healing journeys. Chiron, as a centaur, asks for the integration of animal instinct and intuition with the logical thought processes of the human mind. Mars and Chiron are in a harmonious trine to round out the week, where they support each other and come into a sense of harmony. With this trine, we can use our martial courage to be with the things that are difficult and supports our ability to sit with our wounds, that where we are able to gain information that can help us to heal in some ways. Our ability to be with our difficulty or core wounds allows us to support others through their challenges as well. Mars also helps us to take action, to do what needs to be done in order to support ourselves and each other in whatever process of our healing journey we may find ourselves. Mars is a warrior. And with this transit, I think about a soldier coming home from battle, feeling battered and bruised, but having a new knowledge of life and what needs to be done. From that experience, the returning soldier can help support others who have had similar experiences. Having faced difficulty in battle, they may have a greater courage to show up for what is asked of them and the courage to help others out in difficult situations. Mars's trine to Chiron also makes me think about resilience and the experiences that we have had where we have overcome difficulty in the past, which can act as a medicine to help us to navigate the challenges that we may face in the present or in the future. And my mom said this thing to me one time when I was going through a really difficult situation. She was like, think of all the other hard times you faced in the past and the ways that you were able to get through them. And now you are here and you're older and you have more resources. And just think about everything that you have gained and developed since the last time that you've gone through a process like this. And you can bring all of these resources to bear on this current situation. And I was like, damn, mom, that's pretty good. Thanks. She just really put that one into context. And that sort of reframe helped me to realize all of the resources and benefits and the things that I had going on in order to sort of move through this difficult time. And thanks, Gina Maria, for giving a shout out to my mom. But, I think that idea is really applicable to this transit. How the struggles and battles that we have come through actually provide us with that sense of accomplishment and support that allows us to show up for what is asked of us with courage and allows us to take skillful action in order to do what needs to be done. So as we develop the courage to face our wounds and fears, it helps us to also support others who are working to do the same thing. And healing takes some real courage. And it takes courage to move through grief and fear. And we may not be able to be strong all the time, and that's totally all right. We just need that martial courage to show up for what we can and to take action to do the next right thing, whatever that might look like in the moment. And as we do that, little by little, we develop strength and the knowledge that we are capable of showing up and doing difficult things. And I think this is incredibly beneficial. And this helps us to kind of model that for other people who are going through their own struggles. And Chiron was not only the wounded healer, but he was also the teacher of heroes. And I think this is really important. Through Chiron engaging in his own healing journey, he was like, oh, I've learned some shit. And I can share this with other people. And when I share this with other people, they grow in these amazing ways. And I feel good about myself. And I think that this trine to Mars brings a little of that vibe to the party. And as we do this, little by little, we get stronger, and it helps us to trust ourselves and to know that we are capable of doing this work, even if it's hard or scary or painful. And the work doesn't necessarily get easier because life is still life, but we increase our capacity to be with what's hard and painful. And instead of having our wounds becoming activated and hijacking us and derailing our mission, we can learn to build the muscle of our courage and our ability to take on life on life's terms and trust that we have the capacity to show up for what it's asking of us. Okay, this moves us on to Saturday, December the 6th. And so on Saturday and Sunday, we have Mercury coming into a grand water trine with Jupiter retrograde in Cancer and Saturn, who is now direct in Pisces. So we'll start with Mercury in Scorpio, trine Jupiter retrograde in Cancer. This is going down at 24 degrees and 8 arc minutes, and this is occurring, excuse me, on Saturday, December the 6th. So, um, oh, and Gina Maria saying she wants to know more about the teaching of heroes. That I have something in the works for that, and I will let you know as that comes into development. Um, yeah, to round out the week, we have Mercury in Scorpio perfecting a grand water trine with Jupiter retrograde in Cancer and Saturn in Pisces. The Jupiter trine becomes exact first on Saturday the 6th, and Mercury perfects their trine to Saturn the following day on Sunday, December the 7th at 25 degrees and 14 arc minutes. And we're going to sort of talk about both of these transits together. And this grand water trine is going to be in full effect during the Gemini full moon as well. And so again, a trine is a supportive, harmonious aspect where the planets involved can easily communicate and collaborate. With Mercury trining Jupiter, we get a chance to take the information we have been gathering and processing in our own internal narratives and narration of our lives and kind of adapt it to a larger narrative. Mercury is kind of narrating the action and events of our lives. Oh, I'm going to the store. I'm getting these things. I'm coming back to my house. I'm driving. Why is that person driving like that? It's our own sort of internal interior monologue about what's happening, what we need to do. And Jupiter is a cohering factor that pulls these events together into a coherent narrative that gives us the plot to the story that we're living out. Archetypal psychologist James Hillman writes about this idea in his book, Healing Fiction. He says, only when a narrative receives inner coherence in terms of the depths of human nature do we have fiction. And for this fiction, we need to have a plot. He goes on to say, to plot is to move from asking the question, and then what happened, to the question, why did it happen? And I think this sums up the Mercury-Jupiter portion of this grand water trine. Jupiter helps the events we experience to take on a greater sense of meaning, and it allows us to begin to develop a sense of the why and why these events occurred and how they fit into a bigger context, which allows us to see a greater story arc unfolding through the course of our daily lives. This is what turns the disparate events that we experience and the stories we tell ourselves about them into a kind of greater mythology that has a grander sense of meaning. Hillman goes on to say, the poetic basis of mind suggests that the selective logic operating in the plots of our lives is the logic of mythology. So, how we choose, either consciously or unconsciously, to construct the plot, the why of our lives, is the development of our own personal mythology. And this is a process that we have the agency to co create if we become conscious of it. Hillman goes on to say that plots are myth. The basic answers to why in a story are to be discovered in myths. But a mythos is more than a theory and more than a plot. It is the tale of the interaction of humans and the divine. To be in a mythos is to be inescapably linked with divine powers, and moreover, to be in mimesis with them. This this is applicable to this transit because it allows us to develop a plot or a why from the events that we experience and to put them into the context of the greater myth which we are constructing, which allows us to be in relationship with the divine. And I don't think this has anything to do with the belief in God or a higher power or bearded sky man or anything like that. I see this more as being in right relationship with the forces of nature, with the archetypes of the planets, and kind of coming into right relationship with the flow of life. All of this helps us to derive meaning from our lives and to understand the plot of our lives, the why, which helps us to construct and understand the larger story arc that we are creating or co-creating through our choices and responses to the world, and to show up for the mythological tale that we are living into each day. And it's important to hold this bigger story while we are living out the smaller story of our daily lives. I'm going to the store. Why is that person driving this way? And then coming back and being like, how does this fit into the larger context of the mythos that I'm living out? And with this trine from Mercury to Jupiter, the small story informs the big story and vice versa. And so Sunday, the December the 7th, rounding out the week, we have Mercury in Scorpio, trining Saturn in Pisces, and this is going down at 25 degrees and 14 arc minutes. So as Mercury perfects their trine to Saturn, it helps us to kind of focus our mental energy and to stay connected to the practical matters. While the trine to Jupiter helps us to expand our awareness and to inform the stories we're telling about our lives. Saturn helps us to stay grounded and to put these tales into a kind of practical use. Saturn asks us, what is the motivation of the main character? And how do they respond under pressure? What are we willing to commit to give this story form and to carry on the plot? What are we responsible for, and how do we choose to show up for these responsibilities? And what are the structures and limitations that we are operating within? And how does this shape our mental awareness and our cognitive processes? And how does this impact the story we are living out? Saturn is a planet of reality. It is where our kind of inner world meets the pressures and limitations of the external world. As we experience this, Saturn also asks us to consider if the story that we are telling fits within the constraints of reality, and more importantly, it asks us if the story we are telling and living out is the right story for us. Saturn wants dedication and a commitment to the bit. Saturn asks us, what do we choose to give our mental energy to? We can think about this as attention, which is one of the most powerful and precious natural resources a human possesses. And as they say, where attention goes, energy flows. And so, with this grand trine, Jupiter is helping us to create context for our thoughts and a mythic narrative that helps us to direct our path, while Saturn asks us to train our attention on what we find important and on the plot or on the why of our lives. Saturn provides us with focus through limitation and responsibility. It gives us a structure to operate within, as well as a scaffold that allows us to construct the story we are developing with each choice and action, as well as the longings of our soul. Saturn also helps us to get to the core motivation of our protagonist by applying pressure. A friend of mine, great playwright Daisy Campbell, says if you want to understand a character you are developing, you just keep applying pressure to them because the choices that a character makes under intense pressure reveal who they truly are. And this is how Saturn functions. They keep putting pressure on so we can see who we are at our core. What values do we live up to, and which ones are abandoned in order to survive? And we see this playing out all over politics and the media. And so, with this grand trine, we can ask ourselves, what is the story we are writing for ourselves and we are living? And are we living up to the ideals of our narrative? If not, what might need to shift so that we can be more in line with the character we'd like to see ourselves become? And what might we need to commit to in order to make this story work? Saturn also asks us to take practical action. So while Jupiter is helping us to understand our personal plot and the meaning of our tale, Saturn asks us to take action to bring this story to life. Saturn asks us, what are we willing to do in order to make it real? And in this harmonious aspect, there's a lot of support to bring our stories out of our imagination and off the page and into physical reality. Lastly, this grand water trine provides some support for Mercury, who is now moving direct. Whew, thank God. That retrograde was pretty intense for me. I don't know about y'all, but that one, yeah, was definitely pretty spicy. And now Mercury moving direct, getting some support from the greater malefic Saturn and the greater benefic Jupiter. And this can help us to process and integrate some of the emotional information we have gathered through Mercury's retrograde in the fixed water sign of Scorpio. Again, Jupiter helps us to understand the why and the broader context of what was being churned up during Mercury's retrograde. And Saturn helps us to take practical steps to integrate this information and to put it to good use. This trine may help us to get a bigger picture view of what we need to see with developing through that retrograde process and to understand what we can do with that information to move forward and to move our narrative arc along in ways that are helpful and hopefully sustainable. And with that, my friends, that's all the astro weather that is fit to print. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful to somebody out there. And yeah, I appreciate you giving me the precious human resource of your attention for this little while. Again, my name is John Emerson Bell. I'm an astrologer, tarot reader, and mental health counselor. I do a sometimes weekly astrology radio show called the Melee Report. You can check that out on my SoundCloud at Camp Wizard Camp. I will also throw a link to the latest episode in the show notes, and there is a link in my bio on Instagram. I'll also put something in my stories so you can check it out. And yeah, I'm available for astrology and tarot readings. If you're interested in getting some support and some guidance during these trying and turbulent times, you can hit me up in my DMs on Instagram at Blind Stallion Space Wizard, or go to my website, campwizardcamp.com, and book through the website, or you can send me an email through there and we can schedule a time to meet. Other than that, I think I'm done here. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week. Same wizard time, same wizard channel. And until then, my friends, be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and as always, may the force be with you. Bye now.